It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Welcome to the Property Podcast. It is episode 45. I'm Mr. B. With me is Mr. D. Are you there, Mr. D?
I am Mr. B. Hello. That was very 70s sitcom right there.
It is.
So, a big day for us today. We'll explain why in a minute. Coming up, we're going to be talking about how to avoid a property shark. And then in the resource of the week, Rob is going all hippie on us, so you're not going to want to miss that one.
You're as bad as me.
It's true.
You do it too. You'll see what we mean at the end. Well, thank you for joining us once again this week. But we've got lots and lots to go through. I'm really excited about this episode, and I think there's a ton to take out of it. But before we get going, of course, we always like to start with our iTunes reviews, and we've had some absolute crackers in this week. So thank you to the following people. Max says, wow, a brilliant produced show. The two Robs banter makes this complicated subject a lot easier to digest. Not only the best property podcast, but maybe the best podcast I've ever listened to. Keep up the good work, Max, London.
Thanks, Max.
Super. Cheers, Max. Paul from Wigan says, brilliant podcast. I'm very busy with work, but I've listened to the entire back catalogue since finding it 2 weeks ago. I'm a complete newbie, but I'm trying to build my confidence, analysis paralysis in brackets, to take the first step and maybe contact R&P Property. Rob and Rob make it a pleasure to listen to while giving out some sound advice mixed in with some bad jokes. Yeah, can't argue with that. Keep up the good work and hope to speak soon. Cheers, Paul. And if you call in, I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you. And someone I know has called in. Martin Gordon says, inspirational. Sometimes you need something to inspire you and give you a kick in the bum to get going. The podcast does just that. Two down-to-earth blokes with great chat and brilliant advice. You maybe want to buy more property and start my own podcast. Well done, lads, and congrats on your success, Martin. And I know Martin's been in the hub already as well. So, Martin, thanks for the review and good to see you in the hub too.
Yep, thank you very much. And as a special bonus this week, if there's one thing we like as much as iTunes reviews, it's when people leave us a voicemail. And we've got one of those from Mark Morris.
Hello, Rob and Rob. It's Mark Morris from Worsley, Greater Manchester. Just wanted to say what a great podcast. Fantastic, no-nonsense information. Absolutely spot on. Been a landlord for 15 years, self-managing my own portfolio whilst doing a full-time job. And I just want to say, totally agree with everything you say on fundamentals. Also about not discounting apartments. Most of my portfolio are apartments, and even with the management charges, still getting a great yield on them, and they've turned out really well. I have made a few mistakes, and I'm sure I wouldn't have done that if your podcast had been available earlier. So, as I say, absolutely spot on. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to carrying on listening to the show whilst commuting to work. Okay, thanks guys.
Wow, that's great. Mark's got 15 years experience, still learning, still listening to us and thinks we know what we're talking about, which is great. And it's great to hear that his success has been built on some of the things that we talk about a lot, like the importance of the fundamentals. He's still doing it alongside his job. It sounds like he's sort of gone into this with a kind of get rich slowly mindset rather than going full steam ahead and burning himself out. Great chap. Thank you very much.
Yeah, interesting that you've not discounted apartments, which people just seem to do without doing any research. And Rob and I invest in a lot of apartments, so good to see you're having success there too. I love it that the fact you're still learning. Rob and I are still learning all the time. The person who thinks he knows it all is the biggest fool, as far as I'm concerned. So it's great that you're still building on your knowledge, Mark. And Mark, has anyone ever told you sound like a bit like Gary Barlow? And I mean that as a compliment, but you do sound like a bit of a celeb. So thank you for your SpeakPipe recording. And if anybody else would like to leave us a recording, it's free, it's simple, it's easy to do. Just jump on the website, follow the link at the side where it says leave a recording, and just follow the simple instructions.
Especially if you sound a bit like a celebrity, or you can do an impression of a celebrity. Very much a fan of that.
Yeah, we can go through the X Factor panel. So we can have ex-judges like Cheryl Cole. Or if you can do a good Louis Walsh, please get involved as well. But we're not biased. We're open to all different celebrities. So please give us a recording if you sound like a celebrity or if you just want to leave us a recording. that's okay too.
There's your challenge for this week. I think we might be losing the plot slightly. It's been a long week. So the point we're recording this, today is the day of the Property Hub launch party. So that's probably a couple of weeks ago as you're listening to it, but that's coming up this afternoon for us. We are really, really excited. The hub itself is finally up and running. We had an amazing first couple of days. Can't believe how well it's gone. It's amazing all the conversations that are happening in there. And we just wanted to pull out, Rob, one particular example of a great conversation that's happened in there, which is no thanks to us at all.
Yes, Rob, I'm delighted with how the hub's gone. As you say, several hundreds of people been in the first 24 hours, much more than we expected. Hundreds of posts. One of the ones that caught my eye, as you've already mentioned, was one by Roshan, and asked a great question. It was to do with single-skinned wall extensions. Now, if you're listening to this and going, what? So we're Rob and I. We're not refurbishment experts. It's not an area we, specialize in. So it was great that two of the other hub members, Robert and Chris, came in and passed their advice on, and it was really good advice as well. That's what the hub's all about. It's shared knowledge. It's not just relying on Rob and myself for all the answers, because we haven't got them. As we said, we're still learning ourselves. We know a lot about certain subjects, but other subjects we're learning. So not only did Roshan learn on that, but Rob and I did. So it's brilliant. The forum is so friendly, such a good atmosphere in there. If you've not been in there yet, you might go, atmosphere, but get in there. You see how friendly and helpful everyone is. There's no egos. Everyone's just really happy and helpful. And this topic for me epitomized why we started the hub, because it's an opportunity for property podcast listeners to help each other out.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the sharing of knowledge without being a know-it-all and going, oh, that's a stupid question. I know that. It's about sharing what you know and everyone learning from each other, like you say. It's been really great the last few days going through and reading everyone's introductions. Like we've said, when you join, make your first posted introduction. Just tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, what it is that you're doing, what you want to do. I think that's really important because it means you get to know each other and you kind of got some context for what everyone's talking about. And so it's been really good going through and reading all those introductions. Rob and I are trying to reply to all of them and welcome you and say hello. So if you haven't got involved yet, please do. It's just thepropertyhub.net.
It is. So, Rob, our news story of the week, I've got a dead good deal for you.
Oh, very good. So this story, you get a very nice house in Teddington, nice area. Looking at the photos now, looks good on the inside. Inside could do with a bit of work. The garden has a couple buried in it. It needs a bit of a refurb. Council tax band C, near the train station, has a couple buried in the back garden. That is a summary of this property.
Yeah, that was the right move post. So just going through, built this long ago, close to this, 4 double bedrooms, reception rooms, utility room, garden area measures 50 foot in depth. Previous owners were buried there, and it's council tax band C. You just drop it in the middle, maybe not, people won't pick up on it. What a brilliant post. What a brilliant right move post that one is. Have a look at the news story of the week. Will you learn much from it? Maybe not, but but it may entertain you. It's an interesting post. It'll be in the show notes. Of course, now the Property Podcast notes can all be found in the hub as well to save you time. So you can go to the Property Podcast website. That's still there for the time being, but it's also in the hub too.
Yes, indeed. Right, let's move on then to our topic of the week, which is a really interesting one. It's how to spot a property shark. Property, as we know, is a great tool for making money, generating long-term wealth, and many people are really successful at doing that. But as a result, because property involves large sums of money and it involves people who often at the start don't know exactly what they're doing and they're a little bit wide-eyed, it also attracts the wrong type of people. It attracts people who want to take advantage of newbies and part them from their money. So what we're going to be talking about is some things that you can do to avoid these people. We've talked in the past about how important it is to not just do it on your own. You want to be working with other people. You want to work with professionals or people who know more than you and who can guide you. But you, of course, want to make sure that these people have got your best interests at heart and they're not trying to scam you in some way. So how do you, when you don't have all the answers yourself, how do you recognize whether someone is a shark or someone who can be really helpful to you? That's what we're going to be talking about in this topic.
Yeah, this is one that I'm really, really passionate about. I get calls fairly regularly for people who have been completely robbed or maybe not given the best service or the best deal they possibly could have, or maybe taken advantage of them due to their lack of experience. First of all, let's give you a rundown of just a small section of some scams that I've seen over the last few years. And believe me, there are a lot more. So overseas property schemes that were never built and had no intention of being built. So I can think of quite a famous Caribbean property scheme. Privately, I told a lot of people to avoid this, but publicly I couldn't, because if anybody ever came out against this company, they were sued. The Guardian had to issue an apology after doing a 2-page expo on them and pay a fine to the company for trying to expose them. This company has since gone bankrupt. So the Guardian were right, but they had so much money behind them that they were able to buy the best lawyers, the best solicitors to shut every bad news story down. What they were doing is they built one scheme in the Caribbean and then they were marketing several others. And they couldn't actually afford to complete one scheme if they just sold it out. They had to sell other schemes to finish the scheme that you bought. So effectively, it was a Ponzi scheme. They were using other people's money to build your scheme. So it was always going to fall over. Now, they didn't market it that way. Of course, it was super glossy brochures, slick salespeople, huge commissions. IFAs were selling this. Independent financial advisors were putting people's SIP money into these schemes. You know, that's quite scary as well. But anybody was selling them. You know, regular Joes were just putting up basic websites because the commissions were so big and selling them. It all fell down and a lot of people were burnt. That's just an example of an overseas scheme that has cost lots of people lots of money. Portfolio building schemes, big promises up front, but you've got to pay your 50,000 up front, and people will then go and find you that 4 or 5 houses for that money that will give you a brilliant cash flow. Lots of companies have taken the money, but maybe delivered 1 or 2 houses and then disappeared, or not delivered anything and disappeared. Do you want to be paying huge sums of money up front without any service delivered? I certainly wouldn't, but it happens. Letting agents running off with the deposits. Yes, this has happened too. Letting agents not put in the deposit money from your tenants where it should be going, and then running off with the money, and then you're responsible for paying the tenants back. That's happened. I've seen that. There's lots you could be worried about, but don't worry, because it's easy to avoid them. Even the slickest sharks can be found out, and we're going to run through what you can do to avoid those sharks and not be caught out.
So let's talk about that now then. So the first thing you can do to avoid a shark is to educate yourself. And the good news is you're doing that right now. So well done. Knowledge is power. So you don't want to be relying on trust, because these people are experts in kind of hacking your trust and building that rapport with you and making you trust them when they know that really they're not going to do what they claim they're going to do. You shouldn't feel bad if you're taken in, because that's exactly what they're experts in doing. But the more you know, the stronger your position is. I think the key thing is to ask questions of them, of other people around you, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, they'll probably try and make you feel silly for asking questions, so you don't ask any more, because they know that it's a bad thing. Just don't feel bad. Ask questions of them. Ask people in places like the Property Hub. Ask us. Ask anyone. Often if you ask questions, all these kind of elaborate claims are going to come falling down, and the things that they're deliberately not mentioning, they're trying to direct your attention over to one thing where everything looks really rosy and away from another. But if you start poking around, you're going to get a full picture. So it's all about education. The very worst thing you can do is just kind of land on someone's website, go, oh, yeah, their claims sound good, and just go for it. You want to be doing a heck of a lot of research. And it's a funny thing, because again, it's like people will research buying a new lawnmower for months for a couple of £100, but then they'll happily go and hand over 20 grand to someone because they had a sort of a nice sales pitch on the phone. So, but education is the very first fundamental step that underpins everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. If you know a fair bit about property investment already, your internal alarm's going to go off pretty quickly when people are telling you, oh, this is possible and we can do that. And actually, you know that not to be true. You understand how mortgages work, or you understand how you can leverage. You know, if you have all this knowledge already, if people try and give you a load of bull, then you'll quickly be able to pick up on that. Okay, next thing, you can look out for professional bodies. The company you're working with, are they covered or registered with a professional body? So, property investment company, for example, the Property Ombudsman. It's a no-brainer. If a property investment company isn't registered with the Property Ombudsman, then just walk away, because I can tell you now it costs a few £100s to do. They'll quickly look at you and then they'll give you the approval. If a property investment company is not even willing to do that, then you need to walk away quite quickly, because there's something clearly wrong. Letting agents, there's lots of bodies, professional bodies, ALA being the most commonly known. Now, being protected by all these professional bodies is a good sign, but it's not enough to protect you alone. So don't just go, oh, well, they're with this agency, they're with that body, let's use them. That's not enough. That shouldn't be the end of your due diligence, your research. It's a tick in a box, but you need more ticks. That's a good sign, but don't rely on it alone.
No, so having done that, the next step is some pretty serious research. And there are a few different things that you'll be wanting to research. It's an endless list, but here are the basics. So the first thing to do is to research the company. The easiest thing you can do, and a pretty great place to start, is just doing a Google search. Just stick in the name of the company and have a look at not just the first page, but the first 5 or 10 pages. Because chances are they will have invested to make sure that the positive results about them get to the top and take up page 1. But then if you dig deeper, you might find some things like forum threads or scam reports or anything else that paints them in a less positive light. So do a search, see what comes up. Just doing that alone might trigger a few things and stop you having to go any further. Also, you can go onto Companies House. There's a lot of information that you can get for free. Also, there's a website called Duedil, DUEDIL.com, that takes Companies House data and presents it in a really nice way. And you can buy their accounts if you want to look through all that kind of thing. You can find out a heck of a lot about them. If you can see that their accounts have never been filed or are late or something like that, red flags.
Yeah, I completely agree, Rob. The Google search is a massive one. You've already highlighted the point, but it's so important. The amount of people who try and game Google and dominate the first page, hoping that people won't go to page 2 and 3. They do that for a reason, because most people won't go beyond page 1 of Google. Oh yeah, all looks good. That's fine. As you've quite rightly pointed out, go into pages 2, 3, 4 and 5. You can really find out a lot more about a company. You know, the Companies House as well. Another warning sign is this person opened and closed lots of different companies? Now, it doesn't mean they're dodgy, but it's a warning sign. If they've opened and closed several different companies, then that, to me, okay, that's a small alarm bell. Let's dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, definitely. So that leads us on to talking about the person as well as the company. So for this, go through all the same steps as for the company, but for the actual person that you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a salesperson, you can do it for them. You could also do it for the company directors. Just kind of have a real dig around on Google and Companies House and everywhere else for the people at the company. These days, there's so much information online that I'd almost say that not being able to find anything about them is almost a red flag in itself, because a lot of the people who have got the most knowledge are also really keen to share their knowledge. And so you'll find them on forums, you'll find them on LinkedIn with their full history and everything else. And you'll be able to see who they're connected to and even go and do some research on those. You can get really deep into it. So you can research the company, then research the person. And having done that, then you can research the actual investment that they are trying to sell you. We've got a whole episode on that. Episode number 31 was called How to Research Any Property Investment. That's really important as well, because even if you find nothing but glowing references about the company and the people you're dealing with, you still want to make sure that the investment is sound and make sure that it works for you. So you can't just take anything for granted, even if these people come with a really impressive track record and you kind of assume, oh, well, they've been doing this. There are all these testimonials. I can't find anything bad. It must be genuine. I don't quite understand this investment. It feels a bit weird, but it must be fine. No, you've got to make sure that the investment makes sense as well and go back to asking questions. If you really want to work with them, but you just can't quite understand the investment or there's something that's bothering you, always ask. Because if they react badly to you asking, that's probably a warning sign. But if the investment really does make sense, then that's great. They'll be able to answer your questions and you can go into it feeling totally confident.
Absolutely. But if you've educated yourself, as we mentioned as a previous point, and you find the scheme overly complex, then that, as Rob said, should be a warning sign. You know, why don't I understand this deal? Why is it overly complex? Is that right for my strategy? And researching the person you speak to, are they an expert at property or are they an expert at selling? You need to find out. Nothing wrong if they're an expert at selling, but you then need to double down on the research on the company and the investment. If you're speaking to someone who's never owned a property, but just very good at talking about it, then maybe their experiences and their advice isn't as solid as you need. So you can't rely on their knowledge. You need to double down on your research on that investment and the company you're working with. Okay. We've given you quite a big list so far, but there are other warning signs. One we've talked about a few times throughout the podcast is your gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right when you're talking to the people or researching a company or looking at the investment. If your gut feeling says, it's just something not quite right here, listen, because most of the time your gut feeling's right. Rob's talked about this before, and I think you explained it a lot better than me, Rob, but you talk about how your past experiences and your subconscious have picked up on scenarios before where that's a trigger to your gut feeling to say, listen, this is not a bad thing. And you may not be able to pinpoint why, but it's something you've experienced before. It's sort of come to the forefront of your mind. And that's why you're getting those internal alarm bells.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've summarized it really well. It sounds a bit mad, but it's true. There are reasons you're conscious of such a small amount of what's happening to you and what you know. So you'll find that you are guided by things that you're not consciously aware of. Sometimes it might just be nerves or something else, and you might be trying to look for an excuse because you're worried about taking the next step. But a lot of the time, if it just feels wrong, then it's safest to walk away.
Another warning sign, if it's too good to be true. Double your money in 12 months, retire in 24 months, become a millionaire in 6 months. You know, I might be exaggerated slowly, but you see stuff like 50,000, turn it into £1 million portfolio in a year. This sounds fantastic. Well, it's probably because it's not doable, or not doable for the vast majority of people. If it sounds too good to be true, you know, don't get me wrong, we want a good deal, but then if it's stretching the realms of, you know, realism, then there's probably something wrong, and that requires you to research that a little bit more. If it's too good to be true, you know the saying, it often is. Now, it is true, but you need to research to make sure it is. Don't be blinded by your internal greed. And I'm not saying you're a greedy person, but a lot of human nature is driven by fear and greed. Fear will miss out on a deal, and greed that, you know, we can make a lot of money. Don't let the little greed demon inside you go, there's lots of money to be made. You may not be a greedy person by nature, but something inside you just makes you want to believe that it's true, and then you end up getting burnt. So if it's too good to be true, be very, very careful. Another warning sign, are you experiencing some hard selling? So is the person you're speaking to, or the company you're speaking to, trying to close you down, push you to do a deal, really, you know, working the pressure? Why are they doing that? If it's such a good deal and a good investment, they don't need to hard sell. They don't need to put pressure on you. You know, R&P property, nobody will ever experience that because we've got confidence in what we do. We move every piece of stock we have on. So we don't need to hard sell. You know, we just want to find the right people to work with. We're right for them and they're right for us. And it's a nice experience. If there's something wrong with the product, then that's when hard selling seems to happen. Because people start turning the screw on you, putting pressure on you, telling you it's going fast, you've got to hurry up. Let me tell you, there's a good deal every single week. You know, if you miss out on a good deal this week, this month, there'll be another one next week, next month. Don't feel like the deal you're being offered will be the last good deal that's ever going to exist. That's simply not true. If people are trying to hard sell you, hard pressure sales tactics, be wary, be very wary. They shouldn't need to do that if it's a good deal. If you experience that, walk away.
Yeah, exactly. There is no shortage of good deals. It might not feel like it because they're not easy to find, but there is no shortage of good deals. There will be another one coming along. It's not like, give me all your money now or you'll miss the boat. I think that one of the biggest red flags of all is someone who's trying to give you the hard sell and trying to force you to take action quickly for a reason that kind of sounds a bit made up. Sometimes there's a reason why things have to be done quickly, but a lot of the time they're just putting you under pressure to act fast so you don't think critically enough. So that's a big warning sign for me. Finally, one of the most powerful weapons you've got is your network. You can ask other people who've got experience. And so we've talked before about the importance of having networks and working with people who really know their stuff. And this is one of the best things you can do. Because that way you can not only just ask them if they've got experience of the company or the person, but you can also kind of check out details of a scheme if you're not quite sure what it's all about. You can go to your broker and say, so this guy's telling me that in a couple of months I can refinance and get all my money back plus an extra 50,000. Is that true? And they'll quickly be able to say yes or no. Or you can talk to Rob and say, you sell investments. This guy's sort of trying to sell me this investment. Does this look right to you? By having those kind of people around you, you can ask them and you can get their take on it. And often they'll be able to see something that you've missed. So we've got a ready-made network in the Property Hub that you can tap into that's going to get stronger all the time. but also build your own network. We've done a couple of episodes in the past about how to do that. You can do it online. You can do it by going to events. You can do it by just working with the right people and working with professionals. But it's one of the best things you can possibly do. And another great reason why you shouldn't be doing property on your own. Because as we said right back at the start, property sharks rely on people who are isolated, and they rely on people who don't have the knowledge. And so they're not going to see things that other people would see. So if you can give yourself the knowledge and give yourself the network, then you should never fall victim to one of these people.
I'm really glad we've done this episode, because I've actually in the last week spoke to somebody who has been a victim of a shark. And if we put this together sooner, then maybe that person, because they're a podcast listener, may have not been bitten. Luckily, you know, I've given them some help and advice, and they're now back on track. But it just makes my blood boil when people take advantage of people. So use this episode, arm yourself with what we've given you, and you can avoid those sharks, because unfortunately they do exist, because where there's money, there are people who are less honourable will be attracted to the industry. So just do all you can, follow everything we've said, and avoid those sharks.
Yeah, well, I think after that heated discussion, we need to take a moment, relax, and maybe you've got some resources to help us with that, Rob. Right, before I talk about this resource of the week, I'd like to say I'm from Liverpool. I went to a rough school, so I'm just trying to get some. I played rugby at school and football, so there's my man point. Yeah.
The resource of the week, here we go, meditation. And yes, I meditate. And I know, Rob, you do as well, on and off. You're trying to get into the habit.
Mostly off. It's a difficult habit to form, and I'm sure you're going to tell us why, but you're also going to say why it is worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Meditation is fantastic. I actually went to a retreat back in 2010, to a retreat somewhere in Derby for a few days, just because I was really interested in it. I just like to learn. I'm one of life's learners. I love, as you all podcast listeners are, the fact you listen to this, you're all people who love to learn. And I just wanted to learn a bit more about meditation, because I heard a lot of good things. A lot of people I respected, entrepreneurs, told me they meditated. So I just went along and tried it out. Fantastic weekend. Really good retreat. I'll find a link and put it in the show notes. It cost next to nothing, and I got a lot out of it. Since then, I've meditated on and off. But the last 6 months, as my work life has intensified, you could say, but, very enjoyable, not complaining. I've needed a way to switch off, because I'd find that I'd be working till the last minute of the day, going to sleep, and waking up, picking up my phone and, working as well. So I needed to find a way to switch off, and meditation is one of the ways I've done this. Now, I'm going to link in the show notes to a few different guided meditation programs, apps and websites. So Sean Orford has a daily meditation morning and evening. I'll link to his. There's hundreds on YouTube, but there's a 10-minute one that occasionally I'll listen to on YouTube that you can utilize. Again, these are all free. And then there are some apps on the iTunes store, which I'll link to as well. Some are free, some are paid. All worth doing. But meditation, although it sounds hippie-ish, it's just basically quieting your mind, deep breathing. It doesn't have to be spiritual. If you're not into that sort of thing, still try it. It's just about calming the mind and letting go of certain things that are busy in your head. It's hard to describe, because unless you meditate, you don't know what I'm talking about. But don't just dismiss it, go, meditation. Because if you'd got me 5 years ago, that I would have said the same thing. But I can honestly say that it's a great tool to have, especially if you're a busy person. Taking 10 minutes, 30 minutes out of your day can actually make you more productive. I sometimes feel guilty if I'm doing a 30-minute meditation and 5 minutes in, my brain starts to make noises going, what are you doing? This is half an hour of your day. You haven't got half an hour. Try and fight that if you're a busy person, because you'll actually feel so much better by the time you got to the 30 minutes. But if I am feeling that I've got a particularly busy day on, I'll dip into some of the shorter 10-minute meditations, which I still feel great by the end of it. Try it is all I can say. I like to do it at the end of the day. Some people like to do it at the start of the day. Have a go, see what works best for you. But don't just dismiss it. If you've got a busy life, try one of the 10-minute ones and see how you get on with it. Yeah, definitely. I was saying before we started recording that I was doing it for a while, and then the last few weeks have just been so busy that I stopped because I felt like I couldn't find the time. And I think really that was silly, because when you're busy is the time when you need it most, and you'll probably benefit from having that quiet and that focus. You can always find 10 minutes. So it's well worth a go. So I'm looking forward to reading some of those resources that you're going to link to, Rob.
I read a very good book about it, which I'll link to as well, which helped me a lot to understand what it was all about and what I should be doing. I think I'd definitely benefit from some kind of more guided ones as well. And if you're worried about your man points, I've been doing yoga recently, and so I might talk about that in the future, depending on how well that goes.
Oh, you just made me feel so much better.
There you go.
I'm about as flexible as a plank of wood.
Yeah, me too, as I've discovered. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about that anymore for fear of embarrassing myself, but might talk about it in future if it works out well.
Don't worry, only 30,000 people have heard.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move swiftly on, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that.
So that is about it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. We've got through a lot of stuff. Thank you so much to everyone who left us a review. Thank you to Mark for the voicemail. Please leave us one as well if you want to. Hope you enjoyed our topic. Hope you enjoyed our hippie bit at the end. Next week, we are going to be talking about HMOs at long last. A really popular topic, but for some reason we've never covered it yet. So HMOs, big returns, but is it for you? That's what we're going to be asking. And we've got a party to go to.
We have. I'm going to get my best frock on, Rob. We're going in a few hours, so we'll talk about that next week. Obviously, if you're up to date with this, you've probably been in a few weeks ago, but we're about to experience it. So hopefully it was a great event. We'll tell you next week. And remember, you can discuss this podcast in the Property Hub now. We put the post in there and we have a forum where we can talk about the post. So if you've been bitten by a shark or come close to it, tell us about your experiences. Or if you have any extra tips on how you can avoid a property shark, put yours in too. We'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.